there. Hey there, I'm Sam Larsen-Disney and I'm a UX engineer at American Express, and I'm super excited to be here today to talk about one of my passion projects. Without further ado, let me just start by saying that all views expressed in this talk are my own and do not represent the opinions of any entity whatsoever with which I have been, am now, or will be affiliated with. The title of my talk is Presenting Without Sharing My Screen, or Using React to Replace PowerPoint. And as the title of this talk may suggest, PowerPoint and me are not friends. In fact, I might go as far as to say I hate it. I really like pixel perfection. One of the beauties of being a dev is that we have CSS or SCSS, and we can arrange elements on the page down to pixel values and get them in the right spots the first time around. With PowerPoint, it's a lot more drag and drop, and getting things aligned properly can take a lot more time. It's also overly complex to theme. I don't need all the extra bits and bobs that come with PowerPoint. I really just want to whack some text on a slide and get my point across big and bold. And I think that having something that's more streamlined can sometimes be better. I'm wondering how many people in the audience know when PowerPoint was born. While building this proof of concept, I asked many people, and not many of them knew the answer, but PowerPoint actually started in 1987, 33 years ago. To put that into perspective, Bill Gates was looking a little bit more like this, and Michael Jackson was releasing his Thriller follow-up at the time. There is no doubt that PowerPoint has withstood the test of time, but there's definitely got to be something as an alternative out there for us as developers that might be better for our use case. So I started hunting, and I started looking around, trying to find something that I could use instead that fit my use case. And one thing that I came across was MDX. MDX is Markdown and JSX thrown together. It's an awesome combination. We can start to have interactive charts, animations, or even alerts inside our Markdown content that just would not be feasible in regular Markdown. I thought I would just give you a quick demo of what MDX looks like. So in this example, we can see on line 1, I've got a heading in Markdown, a heading 1 that just says Hello World. And then below that, I've got some JSX content on line 3 to 5. And that's any kind of React code that we want, we can throw inside there. We can also, like we would in any kind of React application, start to import React components from elsewhere and render them on the page too. And this is, perfect for blog posts for devs. As you can see here, one of the things that I've done recently is I made a social distancing infographic poster, and you can see there I've got numbers of days, hours, and minutes, and those were all counting up in real time, and the values all changing, which just would not be regular in normal static content. It's also great for design system documentation. We can start to have our components that we're talking about alongside the documentation and show examples inside the same page, and that can be really helpful to make your documentation more understandable to the end user. My personal website is built in Gatsby.js, and I'm not going to go into huge detail about what Gatsby is now because that's not what this talk is about, but I will just give a very quick overview. Gatsby is a React static site generator, and what that means is that Gatsby can programmatically generate pages for you. You can pass Gatsby content from a whole range of sources, define the template, and it will programmatically create pages from that content for you. It's built with this super cool plugin architecture. And the beauty of the plugins is that you can kind of abstract from end users, devs. We can abstract away complex configurations or reusable code so that they can focus on what really matters, which is their content and their site. And one of the plugins that I came across was Gatsby plugin MDX. And as the name might suggest, this plugin allows us to use MDX content inside our Gatsby site. And by pure coincidence, at the same time, I came across Gatsby theme MDX deck. And what this does is take MDX and turn it into slides. And this looks very similar to the MDX we saw earlier, with one addition, and that is that you can see the 3 dashes, and those 3 dashes indicate segments between slides. So we can start to define multiple slides in a single MDX deck file. This was the PowerPoint alternative I was looking for. Slides can be styled with CSS or Sass. We can throw in React components if we want. It's performant. We can host those slides so I can access them anywhere in the world without worrying about whether I've got my deck on my person with me or not. And we can customize the hell out of it because at the end of the day, it's code and React code. So I thought what I would do is show you some examples of what we can do with React components in slides. One of the first ideas I had was playing with Lottie animations. Animations are a really interesting way to excite users who are visiting your pages. And your slide deck should be no exception. I think we're all familiar with the word art and clip art that we've been seeing for 33 years now, and potentially want something a little bit more flashy. So as you can see, we can add confetti, and you as the person watching this presentation might be getting bored. Maybe I'm boring you as I'm speaking to you, so maybe you want to introduce more confetti. And introducing more confetti is fine because it's only going to affect your screen and not my presentation in any way. So you can start to have a slide deck that talks to the individual user as well. We can also have editable code blocks. So as you can see here on the left, I've got an editor, and on the right, I've got a preview of the content that is created from the editor. And we can start to mess around with this component and turn it into an H1, for example, instead of a paragraph block, and see the result of that. And voila, the result on the right-hand side is updated to show us a heading 1 instead of a paragraph block. And you as a lecturer might decide that you want to introduce interactive elements into your slide deck where people in the audience can actually have a go at implementing what you're talking about. I'm a big fan of themes. I really love playing with color. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I've been experimenting with themes on my personal website a lot recently. And I thought it would be really cool to introduce them into the slide deck. Some of you may have noticed the paintbrush icon up in the corner of the screen. Well, I can click on this and change the color of the slide deck. So I can change it to be blue, rhubarb and custard, midnight, or apocalypse. But this could also be a useful feature to making your slide deck more accessible. Maybe you have themes that are higher contrast, for example. And this kind of got me thinking, maybe an interactive slide deck might be a more memorable one. Job done, right? I was there thinking, I've got what I've wanted. I've got a smaller, lightweight MDX solution to slide decks that I can use wherever I want in the world, and I thought that was it. Oh, how wrong I was. Suddenly, COVID hit the world, and we were all asked to work from home. And this changed a lot for a lot of people. Suddenly we were all working in a really different way than we were used to. And I started to question whether I'd really done the job. Because the whole world went online, and with that, we all started using services like Zoom or Google Meet. And one thing that I like to look at is kind of the data usages of these platforms. So if we look at Zoom, if we're just streaming audio, it uses about 70 megs an hour. And when we go to SD video, it turns into 0.7 gigs, and HD video, it's suddenly 2.5 gigs. And that, in modern society's terms, is not a huge amount of data. But I currently live in a flat that has no fiber. I've got other users on my network. My ISP is not very good. I'm switching soon. And most of the time, I'm also working through a VPN. And this kind of leads to an experience when I'm on a video chat that looks a little bit more pixelated than I would like. I would much prefer something that looked clean and crystal clear, to be honest, when I'm sharing my screen with other people. It really starts to feel like we're going back to the dial-up days. And that's not the kind of experience that I want to have. The UX designer in me thinks this is less than ideal. I spend considerable time putting presentations together, and they deserve a proper delivery. And then suddenly I had this idea. when I'm giving my presentation, my slide decks are already hosted on the internet already because I've built them with Gatsby plugin MDX. So why don't I just send people to that URL and let them follow along as I present? And whenever I'm thinking about this kind of real-time behavior, my thoughts turn to sockets. For those of you who don't know what sockets are, they're a bi-directional communication channel between a client and a server. So just to give you a quick example of what that looks like, you can see at the top of this file I've got an app.js, and that's just emitting on line 3 a message to our server, and then I've got a simple Express Socket Io server set up, and on line 7 I'm reading in that message from any sockets that send it, and I'm just console logging it. But what if we want to store the data that's coming to or from our server? You know, we could actually combine this with Redux and get the behavior we kind of want there. So I found this really cool, awesome piece of middleware for Redux called Redux Socket Io. And what it allows you to do is add a piece of middleware that any messages sent to your Redux store that start with server / are instead sent to the server instead of being handled by your reducer. And you can see this on line 5, where I'm kind of creating this Socket IO middleware and then using it on line 14. But also, any actions that are sent back from the server get passed through our reducer. So you can see on the case that the server might send us back a message of type message, we can actually update our store with the data that's come through with that message, which would then make it accessible within our React application. And on the server side, for example, you can see that on line 12, we can now start emitting actions back to that socket. And you can see there, I'm emitting that type of message with the data good day, which means that the Redux store on the React side would be updated with the good day message. And we can use this to control slide delivery. So this deck component is what is being used to render the presentation deck on the screen right now. And you can see on line 7, I'm taking the index of the current slide I'm on and I'm comparing that to the global presentation index slide. And if the index doesn't match the one that I'm on, I change the presentation index on the server. And you can see I'm doing that by dispatching an action on line 18 that starts with that server / that I was talking about before, which means it's intercepted by that middleware and instead sent to the server. And when the server kind of sees this action, what it does is it updates the presentation.slide that it holds, and then it emits that to all connected clients, so they all get the updated presentation index. And one thing you might have worked out in all of that is that we're not actually updating the position for those clients with that index when they receive it. So I've got this other if statement in there as well that kind of determines whether you're on that same index. So I'm just using line 8 there. You can see I'm just checking whether the location of the path name you're on matches the one with the slide index on the end. And if it doesn't, I jump you to the correct place in the presentation deck. One thing you might have realized in all of that is that any client that's connected that changes index might change the index for everybody. And obviously that's not what we want. We want to identify the presenter in all of this and make it so that only their index changes are the ones that are tracked. And to do this, what I've done is I've set an environment variable up on the server, and I first verify myself as the presenter. So I have a little password dialog box that comes up, and I enter the password and emit that verify action to the server, at which point the server recognizes the socket that's attached, my socket, as the presenter socket, and only allows the action update index, as you can see on line 16, it only allows that action if the socket ID matches the one of the current presenter. So it kind of looks a bit like this. Me as the presenter, I send my change up to the socket server, and then any connected client, whether you're on a mobile device or on your laptop, gets notified of that change and updates the presentation index on your screen. So therefore you get to see the most recent slide that I'm on at the same time as I am. And this kind of happens all in real time. So what I'm going to do now is demonstrate this concept to you by actually having a go. And normally what I would do is invite you all to join in and watch this presentation deck through my website. But unfortunately, due to COVID, I'm recording this talk 2 weeks in advance. So that's not going to work. So what I've done instead is invite a couple of my friends instead to join from their computers at home. And hopefully you'll be able to see one or two of their screens being shared during this presentation. So you can kind of see what their perspective on this presentation deck is as well. So what I'm going to do now is open up my secret menu where I can go live and enter the secret password that tells the server I am the presenter. And now what you should see on Ryan's machine is that we've jumped to the correct point in the deck where I am. So he's now following the deck at my speed. But what if I'm going too fast? So what I've decided to do is add an unfollow button. And what that allows you to do is basically take back control of the deck for yourself. And basically the only thing I had to change to make this work was in that same if that makes you jump slide, I only jump the slide for you if you are also following me. If you've decided to unfollow using the little padlock in the corner of the screen, then what that does is it instead just lets you roam yourself using the arrow key. So then you're in control of the slides. So let's have a look at this solution compared to the Zoom that we had before. If I'm sharing my screen using this method instead of using a Zoom call, the only thing I have to do is load up my site, and I just do the other clients. And that's kind of coming in at a very small amount of data compared to video. So if we look at just standard audio call in Zoom, as I said before, it's 70 megs. Our solution, which is audio plus this site, is kind of around 90 megs. And when you compare that to SD or HD video, you can really see how this can really take the strain off my network. The stress on my network goes down, everybody downloads less, and we have crystal clear content for everybody. I think that's a win-win. And sockets allow for even more crazy React components that you might not have thought about. So these components are experimental, and I haven't tested them with loads and loads of sockets, but I've tested them with a few and they seem to have worked so far. So there's a small asterisk there. One thing that we can start to have fun with is Q&As. So we can actually have the Q&As inside the presentation deck. So you can see here, if I navigate to the next slide, Ryan can ask a question to me, and because I'm the presenter, I can show myself something different. So on my version of the deck, I can see all the questions that have been asked instead. Like Ryan has just asked the question, how long did it take to make the site? And I've been working on it for quite a few months, but once I've acknowledged that I've read the question, I can click it to remind myself that I still have questions that I need to answer, but mark that one as effectively being answered. So that can be really fun. And you start to have nice conversations with the people in the audience as well, especially those who might not want to actively speak out loud and would rather a kind of more introverted people. And so you can also actually have fun with polls, right? So when I was at university, we used PolyV, and we had to leave the lecture slides and go and look at the poll results. But what if we could actually bring those inside the presentation as well? So we could ask the question, are you working from home? And as Ryan votes, we can see that it affects the results, and we can start to see get a picture from the audience about how they feel about certain topics as well, which can be really interesting and help them feel involved in the conversation. We can also have stats on the presentation in the presentation. I'm a big fan of stats pages. I have one on my website that I'm a real fan of, but we can start to see like how many people are currently in the deck, how many times polls have been interacted with, etc. And there's a whole lot more you could do inside your presentation decks. So that can be really fun. And you can actually take this one step further and get really stupid with this technology. So I was at the last HalfStack, and one of the talks was from Charlie, and what she was talking about was something called the PoseNet skeleton. And PoseNet is part of TensorFlow, and what it allows you to do is match using your webcam where the human skeleton is. And we can use that to kind of like potentially do some like really cool things. And one of the things that I thought of because I was building the software at the same time was, when people are speaking, they quite often like to use their hands. They like to gesture a lot. So what if we could do something powerful with those gestures? What if we could actually make them meaningful and do something? And so I came up with this idea of gesturing left or right to make the slide deck go forward or backward. And I made a small POC of this as well. So we can see what I've done is I've implemented a PoseNet camera inside my React code. And every time it finds and detects a position, it sends that position to an array of poses. And then those poses kind of look like this. So it gives us a score, and that score is how confident it is out of 1 about the skeleton it's found. And then we get some key points so we can see, where the wrists are, where the legs are, etc. But the wrists were the bit I cared about because I was going to use those with the gestures. So then what I would do is I would do just some really simple math to work out where inside the window my hands were, inside the camera position. And if I thought we were gesturing left or right, I would make the slides go backwards or forwards accordingly. And what I had was this kind of last punch that I should have made this function just to debounce. So basically just to stop it from being called a lot, because you'd end up like machine going through slides, which is no fun for anybody. But you can see a demo of this in action here. And you can see, like, as I'm gesturing left, the slides go backwards. As I'm gesturing right, the slides go forward. So that's all good fun. And I encourage you to try this yourself. PoseNet is available, it's open source, and there's also some borrowed code that I use that I encourage you to check out. There are also some other further extensions to this project that I'd love to do. I'd love to improve the SEO of it so that you could search for these slide decks using Google. There's also the idea of getting rid of the server altogether and kind of doing this more peer-to-peer. If I could do calling through the application itself, then I actually no longer need to join the Zoom call at all, which I would really, really love. And the final thing we can do is start to play around with sound. And I haven't done this in today's presentation, but you could make everybody's phone in the audience into an orchestra or all applause, or do other things, while they're on your presentation deck, and maybe have more interaction both with each other and the presenter while you're presenting, which I think would be really, really cool. And that's all, folks. So you can find me on the interwebs at sld.codes. I've got links all over this presentation deck, which you might have noticed. If you go to follow.sld.codes, that's follow.sld.codes, it will send you to my presentations, and you can click on the first one and basically have a go through this deck and see what you think of this technology. Once again, really sorry that I couldn't demo this properly live. I would love to have had you all involved in this presentation deck, but I hope you found it informative, and I hope you learned something new. Thanks very much for your time. Hey. Hi there. Hey there. Oh, that's so janky. I'm saying so much. Sam, just chill out and think about what you're going to say.
So firstly, Sam, what an amazing talk. Well done. Congratulations for getting all the way through it.
Thank you very much.
So in true developer style, you thought there's millions of different presentation systems out there, so I'll just build my own. So,
sure.
Hats off for that.
I guess mine has the niche use case of like being for places where you don't have very good internet connection, right? So the idea of like, I always find that I've got really bitty video quality. Today's an exception because I have officially changed internet providers, so you should be seeing me in some kind of clearer format. But up until recently, it was very, very bitty and grainy, and that's not nice when you're watching it either, right? And when you start to kind of like look at code and stuff as well, and you need that kind of finer detail, it just wasn't working out for me. So I think kind of getting rid of the weight and putting it off onto a server, and then everyone's just pulling their own copy of a static site, and then me just kind of being the remote and then just having that single socket connection to maintain the whole thing makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic.
It was purely selfish, right?
Yeah, as soon as you said your internet connection was amazing, like you froze for like half a second and then split over to the side.
Comedic value. Yeah.
It was great. It was almost on purpose. So whenever I hear about MDX, I always think, oh, like Markdown plus JSX, which is kind of like XML. It's almost like you're creating HTML. It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
No, I really like it. It's funny. But how do you find like using Markdown versus other stuff? Really, like, what was the like streamlining benefit there? Or how, like I've seen it before, but like how useful was that as part of your journey?
So I really like it because I think in terms of like just Markdown without the X bit, right? So I use Typora, which is a great little editor for Markdown, and I can just like effectively just have the notes on my whole talk, and then I can convert it into an MDX slide by just adding 3 dashes between. Suddenly I've got a slide deck. There's like literally no more work I have to put in to get a deck that works. Obviously, then I can start to make it more pretty, which I hate that expression because, you know, I'm like part UX designer, and people think that sometimes my job is just to prettify things, but it's not. But, you know, when I want to add a bit of sugar on the top, you know, and I start throwing in React components, and like I have generic ones for confetti and like big success messages and all kinds of stuff like that now. But, you know, when you start to have that component library built up and you're just literally making notes and you're done. Like, I just feel like the process of getting a deck out there is quite like streamlined. So yeah, I absolutely love working on MDX for that reason.
Very cool. Yeah, years ago, I did like a dojo training workshop when I was at SitePen, and we had 5 days of content done as Markdown files and like runnable examples in a browser with WebSockets, but it was definitely not lightweight like what you're doing because it was not possible back then. I was looking at your file sizes and like, wow.
You had live code editors that were checking the code as well.
Yeah, exactly. So
yeah, I haven't thought about that at all.
Yeah, it's a cool, fun problem.
Super interesting because he was talking about closed captions, and that's something that I'm thinking about introducing into this. Also audio, because then I literally don't have to join a call at all. I can just have the audio in my slide deck, and then there's no need for me to even join Zoom or Skype or whatever it is.
Yeah, there's been I don't know if you've checked out like the GPT-3 stuff from OpenAI, but there's been a lot of experiments where people like write some text and then they generate like UI diagrams and they generate React components and they generate their tests. And I'm like, if you could really do that, like we're going to have nothing to do in a few years other than learn how to write in English again, which we clearly can't do well enough anymore. So it's pretty funny.
100%. Maybe I should use that to actually just generate the slide deck. So I just say like new slide, title, and then, you know, it just bangs it all out. That'd be really cool.
That would be cool. I would love to have my talks written for me. That'd be great.
Just dictate the whole thing, right? That'd be so good.
Yeah. I can like have an avatar that like acts it out for me, and then I don't have to listen to my own voice because I can use some really amazing like Hollywood actor like voiceover voice, and it'd be pretty fun. Now I have an idea for my next talk.
If we keep doing this, we don't have to fly to conferences to give the talks anymore, which would be not so good. So maybe we shouldn't go too far with this. Right?
Yeah. It's like this whole Skynet thing all over again, right?
100%. Yeah.
So how have you been dealing with this crazy year of lockdown and isolation and whatnot?
I want to say okay. I think as engineers, web devs, we're quite well set up to handle this kind of scenario compared to most people, and I think we're lucky in that regard. I'm not going into the office anymore, but you know, I've got the VPN connection, I got the laptop, and I can just kind of get on with my day job still. A lot of people have been put out of work, so like I think that we're very lucky, and you know, I don't want to complain too much. Although I am English, so maybe I should be complaining more.
Have you found yourself upgrading your home setup at all?
Yeah, I got a standing desk, but only the IKEA one. I'm not super fancy. I couldn't spend 10 grand on a new desk or anything, but no, it does make a world of difference, you know.
You are going to love my like deep thoughts interlude in a few minutes. I'll tell you that.
Also, you might have noticed in my talk there was a lot of Lego in the background. I think my Lego collection's what's expanded the most during lockdown. Big fan of that. Yeah.
Yes.
So you mentioned that you were thinking about expanding it to use peer-to-peer.
Yeah, just as an idea. If I don't want the slide deck to be out there, maybe it's something that's meant to be more discreet, or I don't know what that would do to like the connection stuff. I literally haven't not looked into it at all. The only idea that I have pursued since actually recording that talk is messing around with music. So I had this lovely idea where the audience, all their phones start harmonizing and playing music. And so I've kind of got that in the works. So maybe I should save that for the next talk. But like,
audio,
sorts of crazy stuff. Yes, I worked that bit out. That bit's okay. Yeah. But also, like, you could make one of their phones at random play the old classic Nokia ringtone and like have a go at them, even though you've triggered it, or like all sorts of weird stuff like that. Like, you can have a lot of fun with your audience. I think if you start introducing music, you can even make them all clap for you, even if they don't like your talk. So like, yeah.
I experimented with applause tracks for the conference, and it just sounded a little too fake, but in my mind, I'm clapping after every session. So yeah.
Sounds good.
I do like that idea. So somebody in the chat has said that there may be browser makers that are doing experiments with automated captioning of any audio running in the tab. And that came from Chris, so you can guess which browser that's going to be. Is this something that you might end up doing in browser if you do end up putting captioning in, or are you thinking
100%.
about library?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go with whichever option's easiest because I'm a developer and we'll take the lazy route, right? So I don't know if the browser APIs get the job done, then 100%. Otherwise, I guess if the talk is practiced enough and regimented, then I can put the captions on the slides and I know what I'm going to say on them anyway. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, that's kind of cheating though. I like the live caption idea much more. So yeah, maybe if there's browser APIs that will do it, I'd love to experiment with those for my next talk.
Nice.
I think doing it live is good because that's where you get all of the mistakes and the funny, happy accidents like Ramon was talking about earlier on, right?
Yeah, you want the humor of it all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like last HalfStack when I recorded my session, my demo did not work at all. And the next day it magically worked. And I thought I could just cut all this out. I'm like, no. I got to like keep all this pain and struggle so it's real. And I love that you kind of shared at the beginning and end of your talk, just like all your like miscues and mistakes and all your ums and ahs, which I thought was pretty amazing. So it's very nice.
Well, I think that's the reality of the situation. It kind of shows we're a bit more human than we might look when we're recording a talk. I can guarantee you if I'd done this on stage, there would have been a lot more ums. But like, I think it's good that we can still have the conference and, still connect and meet each other and, show off what we're working on. And yeah, I really liked it. And, I was at the last one, was it February, March? I can't remember.
May. It was May, believe it or
May.
not. It feels like a year ago. Yeah.
In the middle of lockdown, right? Slap bang in the middle of lockdown. And like, it was something positive to look forward to as well. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that way. So thank you very much for running it. Yeah, it's good fun.
Thank you. So we have about a 10 or 15 minute break with various interludes and stuff. This first one is a really nice video about how to be at home. It's pretty cool. The people who created it gave me permission to replay it, so it's pretty nice. And then some other fun stuff created by the HalfStack community. So enjoy, and thanks again, Sam. And we'll see you in the chat.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.